and it's nice to see so many familiar faces here. Saniona is a Danish biotech company, Jonas just mentioned, in CNS metabolic diseases. We founded the company back in 2012. I did it together with Thomas Feldhus and a few others. And we are now listed here in Stockholm at the Nasdaq Small Cap. Oh, sorry. So we feel we are a leading company within our field of research, which is ion channels, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that also goes into the CNS. And we've been able to make a number of partnerships over the first years of existence with some of the biggest players in the field. That is Pfizer, it's Johnson & Johnson, and more recently Boehringer Ingelheim. And that is based on this advanced technology platform and programs. So the programs are, the pipeline is actually quite wide, and also it's quite advanced. We have actually one compound which is getting very close to the market now, and that's a compound in obesity, and it's potentially coming to the market in Mexico next year. It's in registration phase right now. It has shown very, very good weight loss. And another version of that drug called Tesomet, we are developing internally for eating disorders, rare eating disorders, and have a very interesting market potential there to go on our own into this billion-dollar opportunity. And we've already seen efficacy of the drug in one of the two indications we are going for. And then we have made a number of, actually 3 spin-outs, and one of them we'll actually present later today. We also have a spin-out which is in phase 2, and the others are going into phase 2. And we have made a number of partnerships, as I said. One with Boehringer Ingelheim, we already received around 100 million Swedish kronor in upfront payments, in milestone payments, and we are hoping for another milestone payment early next year. So there are several compounds from our early stage ion channel platform that are now moving into the clinic, and I'll show you a couple of those. So we when we show our pipeline, we show it in 2 different versions. One is the internal pipeline where we are investing ourselves, and it is in particular this Tesomet product in these 2 indications, which we call Prader-Willi syndrome and hypothalamic obesity. I'll talk more about that. And here we are in phase 2, and as mentioned, we have shown efficacy in one of the indications and just started the phase 2 studies in the other indications. 2 other earlier stage programs now moving into the clinic or towards the clinic, completely new concept for treating pain, and also a program in inflammation, in general inflammation, particularly in Crohn's disease and colitis, where we are very close to selecting the candidate. I mentioned the list of partner programs, the Mexican deal, where our partner Medix showed very good efficacy in obesity in their registration phase 3 studies, and now moving towards the launch of that potentially early next year. The Cadent, one of our spin-out companies, we have still have an ownership in the company, and we have royalties on the product that are now developed in 2 different indications, and one of them in phase 2, the other one potentially very soon going into phase 2. We have the Boehringer deal in schizophrenia. It's an early program, but also here we expect a milestone soon when they enter into phase 1 studies. And then finally, a cocaine addiction program run with academic investigators in the US in phase 2. So a very long pipeline. I'll talk about a few of these programs. And of course, tesofensine, closest to the market, is important. The market in Mexico is quite interesting. It's around $250 million right now. And our partner there, Medix, have about half of that market. And with this new product, they believe they can really boost their market. And we'll, of course, have an interesting double-digit royalty of that. And they have paid for everything, and we also have the data that they have generated. And we intend to consider that, to use that in several other countries in Latin America, where the same package can be used for registration. And one of them is Argentina, where Medix also has the right. Another one could, of course, be Brazil. The most important program we consider to be Tesomet. It is a little behind tesofensine, of course, but still we see the market opportunity for us to be very, very big there. With the Prader-Willi syndrome, estimated market size of $3 billion in hypothalamic obesity, maybe a little less, but still a billion-dollar opportunity. So the status of that is that we are now just these months completing the open label extension of a phase 2 study where we've shown very nice efficacy. We have done the dose finding, and now we are really at the turning point getting ready for the pivotal phase 2b, phase 3 studies, which will be run more or less in one flow and expect to file in 2021-22. In hypothalamic obesity, we started the study and it should be ready about the same time. The Prader-Willi syndrome, I think most of you have heard about this before, but it's a disease where the patients have no appetite control whatsoever because they have damage in their appetite center. And they have also other problems, but this is their main problem. They think of nothing but eating, and this is a terrible condition for them. And also, of course, they get very, very big. And we think we can treat that with our Tesomet product because it actually controls appetite, it controls craving for food. The market opportunity, as I said, could be very substantial, although there are not that many patients in this genetic disease. We can demand a very high price because it's a life-threatening disease, and also there is no approved drug yet for treating this disease. It's clear endpoints, and also we think it's small studies that we would actually be able to finance ourselves and keep the market for ourselves. As I said, we have done phase 2 studies for the last 1.5 years or so, and we have done the proof of concept. We know that it works. It's actually very effective. And we also have done a dose-finding study in teenagers, and with a quarter of the dose we used here, and now moving up in dose. So we are at the turning point where we can conclude from the studies, and it is that it's very effective in both reducing the craving for food and also on the weight. And we think we have sufficient data to support a phase 2b, phase 3 program, and we'll discuss that with the regulators this autumn is the plan. So we think we will start with a dose of 0.25 milligram in these. And this is how the design of the study looks for now. We intend to do 3 doses in this phase 2b study. First, a fixed dose and then a flexible dose in parallel with a placebo. And then after half a year, we read out the double-blind part of the study, and that would lead to the second part, the phase 3 pivotal study number 2, which is a placebo, and one of these 2 we continue for another 6 months. And then in parallel, or after this, we'll do extension of this study, extension of this study, and all this will be the registration package. I think most of you may have seen the data before, really very interesting data, giving a very nice weight loss of around 7% in just 3 months, and also seeing a dramatic effect on this main problem that these patients have. They simply stop craving for food. This hyperphagia score goes essentially down to 0 within 3 months, which is really, really remarkable. And nobody else in the field has seen anything close to this. The second part of the study was in teenagers, and we used a quarter of the dose, as I mentioned. So the other indication, the hypothalamic obesity, that is actually quite similar to Prader-Willi syndrome. Here there also is an almost complete lack of appetite control, but now it's not a genetic disease. It's a disease that's caused by a damage to the brain, to this region of the brain where the appetite center is. And it can be either a trauma, or it actually, in most cases, it's a benign cancer that grows into the area and actually destroys that field. And that has significant consequences, in particular in relation to the appetite control. So also these patients from one day to the other go from being lean to being very big because they simply think about eating all of the time. This can also be life-threatening and certainly has severe quality of life consequences. Here is a similar diagram showing the distribution of patients in Europe and US and Japan. Also a small population, but the story is essentially the same, that we can demand a high price. There's no treatment whatsoever today, and also we think we can do this simply in studies like this, where we have a phase 2 study ongoing in Denmark in one of the most recognized centers in this field, and they are looking for, of course, changes in body weight, appetite, and quality of life in this 6-month study in up to 25 patients. So the general early stage pipeline, I don't have much time to talk about this. It is, and I also talked a little bit about it before, but I'll specifically mention some of the very unique programs that we've been able to make out of our internal platform, where we are really leading in the world. So the Cadent program, which we put into a spin-out, it's a program that controls the fine motor movements in patients that have a genetic disease and they actually die from the disease, ataxia. And there's no treatment today. Cadent is moving towards the phase 2 in that indication and also are already in phase 2 in essential tremor. So very advanced in these few years we've been on the road. The SAN711 is also a unique new principle, potentially revolutionizing principle in treatment of pain and in treatment of itching. Itching you can get if you have kidney disease and you have simply chronic itching, nothing to do about it. It's really a terrible condition. This new principle has shown very remarkable effect in itching and also in the chronic pain. The Boehringer Ingelheim I cannot talk much about, but of course they are thrilled with the program in schizophrenia and hopefully go into phase 1 early next year. IK program, also completely new principle for treatment of inflammation and other programs. So this is also to illustrate that we have a number of partnership opportunities. We've made a few already, and also these are all ready for partnering. We'll probably keep one of them for ourselves, but the others we could partner. So financials I'll not talk much about, but again, stress that we have been able to really secure quite a significant income from our partnerships. We've made more money from partnering than we have raised in the share market. And also last year we came out very nice results because of a milestone from Boehringer. So near-term inflection points, well, the Tesomet product in Prader-Willi syndrome will read out very soon, the phase 2A study, and we'll initiate the phase 2B3 pivotal studies, very important. And also in about half a year or a little more, we'll get data from the hypothalamic obesity study. The product that's going to the market in Mexico, hopefully, we will expect the filing very, very soon. There will be meetings with the authorities, COFEPRIS in Medix now, and also the approval hopefully this year and launch next year and the year after in Argentina. I mentioned some of the milestones in the early program. So Saniona is now out in a financing round. We have just announced a rights issue, which is underwritten up to 85%. And so our current shareholders will receive 1 subscription right for each share, and they will get 2 new shares for 11 subscription rights. It's a fair price of 18 kroner per share. The subscription period is running right now from the 10th to the 25th of June. So just to conclude, we feel we are a leading company within our field of discovery in the ion channel field, in the CNS field, and we have 5 programs in clinical development. We have a world-class ion channel team, and based on this, we've been able to make a number of partnerships over the years. We have been able to show efficacy in phase 3 with a tesofensine product and bring it to the market. Another product, Tesomet, we'll bring on our own to the market in Prader-Willi syndrome. And all of these $1 billion potential. So the news flow we see to be quite intensive over the next months. So we hope that if you are already shareholder, you consider to use your rights in this offering, and if you're not shareholder, I think it's also a good opportunity to get into the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Jørgen. Thank you very much. Well, it's obvious that you have an interesting pipeline going forward. I'm kind of interested in the near-term possible going to the market with a product through your Mexican partner, then Medix. Yeah. You mentioned that the overall market for obesity in Mexico is $250 million. Yes. And that Medix has around half of that. Mm-hmm. What kind of market share could you expect for Tesomet?
Yeah, you can do your own calculation. Of course, I'm not allowed to talk about it. I think the analysts estimate that it'll be a royalty around 15%, and so you can do your calculations. It's a very, very significant amount of money that we could get from that royalty in Mexico alone, and that would of course contribute significantly to the financing of our clinical development programs already potentially from next year. Mm.
Well, seeing then that you have that potential cash inflow in the near future, you have now decided to change the financing strategy a little bit. Can you tell us why now doing the share issue?
Yes, I think, as I mentioned, we are at a very important turning point now. We have completed the phase 2A studies in these very important indications, and now we are taking the next very big step for the final pivotal studies. And this takes quite a bit of money to prepare for that. It's not only to write documents, it's also to make new tablets and a lot of things. So we need quite substantial money to initiate that process. And definitely the financing solution that we've used the last 1.5 years, it will not provide for that. It was made as a short-term thing, and now we are in the more normal biotech world where we make offerings to the public to finance our activities.
Mm. And that the previous solution, then you had an agreement with Nice and Green regarding convertible loans. How has that worked out for you, you think?
I think it has worked really well for us. The share price when we entered into the agreement was 27. It was also 27 before we went out in this offering. So we could have, of course, had a worry that it would pressure our price, and maybe it has to an extent. It could have gone up on the way, but actually it has been very mild to our shares, and it has really provided us with the capital we needed in a very flexible, in a very cheap way. So I think this was the right thing for us to do at that time, to bring us from where we were to a new turning point. Mm.
But looking at you mentioned that the share price and the pressure that could have been a reason for it being on the same level. During the same period, you had a quite significant news flow as well, quite a lot of interesting milestones coming up. So no regrets regarding that?
Of course, it's always nice to see your share price go up to the heaven, but there's also a risk in that it can drop easily from that. I see this as a long-term development of the company. We are building value in the company every day, and we have reached all our milestones. We are building the company, and therefore the share price will follow. Maybe not now, but it will definitely at some point reflect what we have in the company.
Mm. And looking at Saniona's pipeline, you have a broad pipeline with 5 clinical stage programs. You have several partnerships in place. You have the Medix collaboration that could generate royalties within the near future and so on. And you're doing a share issue. How come you're not attracting institutional investors at this point?
Well, I think we are talking with many of the very big international funds, but generally these professional biotech funds are not investing in a company our size. We are simply too small at this point in time. So, but I'm sure they will come in. Of course, we would have preferred they came in now, but we have time to wait for them. That's the general picture.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to seeing Saniona growing into that size of a company that will attract them. And finishing off, what are you yourself most excited about in your near-time future regarding possible milestones?
Well, I see the most important value driver for us to be the Tesomet, where we're now getting into the last part of the development, which is really, really exciting. We could really change the life for these patients and also have a very good market opportunity. But actually, for me personally, it's also extremely interesting to get potentially tesofensine on the market next year. This will be my first drug on the market, and I really worked my whole life to get there. Very few people will actually, in our industry, will actually be able to see a product to the market. And this was developed in my lab, and I love the program.
I can understand that. Well, we wish you all the luck with that, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Jonas.